My name is Commander Ava Merrick. I've worn the uniform of the Coalition Navy for 17 years. I've commanded starships in hostile territory, negotiated ceasefires on the edge of war, and led men and women through operations where failure wasn't an option. Medals sit in a box on my shelf, symbols of missions completed and lives saved. Yet somehow, when I look in the mirror, I still see the girl trying to prove she's enough. I come from a family of legacy. My father, Rear Admiral Thomas Merrick, has spent his life serving the Navy. A living legend in some circles, a ghost in mine. My younger brother Jason was practically handed his commission fresh out of the academy. Me? I clawed for every ounce of recognition, every promotion. Even now, I feel like a ghost in my own story, always watching others get the credit while I grind myself to the bone. For as long as I can remember, I've carried the weight of not being the son my father wanted. Jason was everything I wasn't: charming, relaxed, adored. He excelled effortlessly, while I burned myself down to prove I deserved the same applause. It never came. I try not to think about it too much. The missions keep me focused. There's no room for doubt when you're responsible for lives. But sometimes, in the quiet, it creeps in, that gnawing feeling of inadequacy, of being overlooked, not because I failed, but because I was never seen to begin with. That feeling became impossible to ignore when the news came about the medal. It arrived on a Tuesday, late into a planetary cycle that had bled into 0300 hours. We were still stationed near the Othari perimeter, a tense region held together by treaties and polite lies. I'd just finished debriefing Lieutenant Kwan after a supply raid gone wrong. The comms officer intercepted a high-priority message, encrypted, urgent, bearing Naval High Command's seal. At first, I thought it was a reassignment, maybe a court inquiry. Those came with too much familiarity these days. Instead, it was a citation. The Gallant Star, one of the highest commendations in the Coalition Navy, awarded for exceptional leadership and valor under fire. The mission it referenced was the Ilari evacuation. I stared at the words, not quite processing them, not because I didn't deserve the medal, but because it had taken them this asterisk long to notice. The Ilari evacuation had happened nearly 6 months prior. A refugee colony, under siege by pirate militias. We'd received the distress call late. Intel had flagged it low priority, an error I still believe was deliberate. We jumped in with only half a squadron and minimal ground support. The situation was worse than predicted. Fires, collapsed infrastructure, children being loaded onto gunships under sniper fire. We had no reinforcements, no real plan. But we got them out. I coordinated every shuttle, every cover fire detail, ran targeting algorithms while giving CPR to a bleeding engineer whose lungs had collapsed from smoke inhalation. 42 personnel injured, 3 dead, over 900 civilians saved, no backup, no recognition. Just a silent transfer order 3 weeks later, like it had never happened. And now, 6 months later, they wanted to give me a medal. I should have felt something. Pride, maybe? Gratitude? Validation? Instead, I felt a chill crawling up my spine, like the moment before a battle begins, when your instincts tell you something isn't right. High Command doesn't hand out gallant stars to make up for past mistakes. They hand them out to soften you, to line you up for something worse. A chess piece dressed in gold before being sacrificed. Still, I nodded, thanked the Admiral who called to inform me. I smiled like a good officer does, said all the right words, and hung up. Then I sat in my quarters for a long time, staring at the empty bottle of Jarro whiskey on my shelf, wondering when the last time was that I'd felt like anything but a tool in someone else's game. My father didn't call. Not after the medal, not after the mission, not when we lost Ensign Delra to enemy fire. He never calls. I've tried to stop expecting it, but expectations are harder to kill than enemy drones. Jason, on the other hand, did call, briefly. A 5-minute holocom just long enough to congratulate me, ask if I'd seen the latest fleet ball standings, and humble brag about his new desk position on Terra Prime. Safe, clean, admired. He joked that I'd finally caught up to him in medals. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because pretending we're close has become our family's favorite pastime. He looked good, relaxed, as if command was a suggestion, not a burden. Maybe it is for people like him. Sometimes I wonder what it would have felt like to grow up in a family where I didn't have to fight for every ounce of love. But wondering is a luxury I can't afford. Not out here, not anymore. There's a particular silence that settles on a ship after midnight. The hum of the engines becomes a lullaby. Footsteps are rare. Crew whisper if they speak at all, as if the dark itself is listening. It's in those moments, between starfields and sleep, that I feel the weight return. Not the weight of command. That I carry with precision. No, the other weight. The invisible one. The one made of doubts and scars no one else can see. The one that whispers, "You're still not enough." I've tried to drown it in discipline. In long hours, perfect reports, tactical brilliance. I've broken records in simulations, led high-risk missions others wouldn't touch. My name is known in some command circles, spoken with respect, sometimes even fear. But respect is not love, and fear is not recognition. I think the worst part isn't that my father never said he was proud. It's that I keep hoping he might. At 17, I enrolled in the academy to get out of his shadow. I told myself I didn't care if he noticed. I made friends there, brief ones, relationships that didn't last. I was too focused, too sharp, too asterisk much, asterisk. Or maybe I was never enough for them either. Every time I got close to someone, I'd pull back. Subconsciously, maybe. But the fear was always there, that if they really knew me, past the title, past the command, they'd see the fractures underneath and walk away. So I kept people at a distance. Easier that way, cleaner. But loneliness is clever. It sneaks in where pride can't shield you. It lives in the empty seats of the mess hall, in the second cup of coffee you pour out of habit and then leave untouched. It lives in your voice when you say, "I'm fine," and no one pushes back. I've thought about leaving the Navy, once, maybe twice. It always starts the same. A fantasy. A little place near the coast on Kasari Prime, where the air smells like cinnamon and old trees. A quiet life. A life without reports, without orders, without ghosts. I'd have a garden, maybe a dog. Something simple, something real. But the fantasy always ends the same way too. With a message, a call, a crisis no one else can fix. And I say yes, every time. Because somewhere along the way, the mission became who I am. Maybe that's what scares me most. Who I'd be without it. The ceremony for the Gallant Star is scheduled in 2 weeks. Terra Prime. Full honors. I'm expected to attend, stand straight, accept applause, smile for the holocams, play the role. And maybe I will. But inside, I'll be watching, waiting, trying to see if he's there, my father, trying to guess if he'll shake my hand or look through me like he always has. And if he doesn't come, I'll survive. I always do. But the girl in the mirror, the one who still whispers, asterisk, try harder, she won't forget, not this time. Because medals may shine, but they don't fill the hollow. They never have. We were back at Port Galleon for debriefing after Operation Dusk Flare. The hangars still smelled like coolant and old smoke, and the corridors hummed with the quiet tension of a station trying to forget the war that brushed its edge. Dusk Flare had been brutal, a diplomatic extraction that spiraled into a full-scale skirmish with breakaway colonial factions. The kind of operation where one misstep could trigger another decade of bloodshed. We got the diplomat out. 2 of them, actually. Lost 3 crew members in the process. Nearly lost more. My team pulled through. Lives were saved. Damage was contained. I led that mission. I coordinated every detail. The report was still fresh on my datapad, waiting for final submission. I'd rewritten it twice, balancing honesty with diplomacy. I knew how it would read by the time command saw it. Successful mission, moderate losses, objective secured. The truth behind those lines? I made decisions that got people killed. I made harder ones to keep others alive. I stood on a battlefield soaked in ash and silence, giving the evac order over a comm channel that buzzed with the static of the dying. I don't write that part down. That part stays in my head, So when my father requested a private dinner during my brief rotation at Port Galleon, I thought, idiotically, that maybe this time would be different. Maybe he'd heard about dusk flare. Maybe he'd seen the footage, read the reports, asterisk seen me, asterisk. Maybe, just once, he wanted to say he was proud. I should have known better. The restaurant was one of those old Navy establishments just off the command deck. Dark wood panels, real glass windows with a view of the inner docking bays, dim yellow lighting that tried to make metal and war feel warm. I'd been there before, usually for post-mission gatherings with my crew. That night, I arrived 5 minutes early. He was already seated, of course, waiting with a straight back and a datapad in hand. Rear Admiral Thomas Merrick wore his uniform like it was molded to him. His hair was still iron gray, swept back with regulation-perfect precision. No medals today, just the formal black, with the red trim of his rank. He didn't stand when I approached, didn't look up when I sat down. "Commander," he said by way of greeting. "Admiral," I replied. He nodded in approval. He always preferred rank over relation. For a while there was silence. A server brought synth wine and bread I didn't touch. My father typed something on his pad, then finally set it aside. "Jason will be receiving the Navy Commendation Medal for Starhold," he said, still not meeting my eyes. It took a second to register. "Starhold?" I asked. "That was my mission. Jason wasn't even there." He scrolled idly through a menu. "His name is on the logistics support," he said calmly, as if that explained everything. "He handled coordination back on Earth," I said slowly, not quite believing I was explaining this out loud. "He filed supply requests and authorized fuel lines. I led the mission. I was in the field. I commanded 2 squadrons. Jason never set foot on the station." He looked up finally, and there was something sharp in his eyes. Not anger, something worse. Dismissal. "You did your job, Ava," he said. "That's what you're paid to do." And just like that, the conversation was over. I sat there, stunned. The words sat in my mouth like lead, unswallowed. My jaw clenched. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized he hadn't even considered how it might sound. Because in his world, Jason getting credit for my mission wasn't a distortion. It was an inevitability. Of course Jason deserved the medal. Of course I didn't need it. Of course I was just doing my job. I wanted to stand. I wanted to shout. Instead, I reached for my glass and sipped the wine, pretending it didn't taste like ash. After a long silence, he added, "Don't let it distract you. There are rumors about a new assignment. Something Joint Command is building. Your name's on the short list." I stared at him. "You knew this was going to upset me, and you led with it anyway." His expression didn't change. "You need to toughen up, Ava. The galaxy doesn't hand out fairness. It hands out opportunity. Jason took his." "No, you gave it to him." Something flickered in his eyes, and for a moment, I saw it. The tiniest crack in the Admiral's armor. But it was gone before I could catch it. He set down his glass. "I've seen your record," he said. "Impressive. But medals and praise don't make a leader. They don't make a legacy. Legacy is about the work. Quiet, steady, unglamorous. You do well to remember that." I laughed. Quiet, bitter. "Funny. That's what I've been doing my whole career. Quiet work, thankless missions, while Jason basks in legacy built off my blood." His gaze hardened. "That's enough." I stood. "I agree." The corridor outside the restaurant was cold and quiet, the hum of the station loud in my ears. I walked, brisk and aimless, until I found a window that overlooked the starfields outside the hangar. Rows of ships hovered in stable dock, shapes I could name from memory. I leaned my forehead against the glass and tried to breathe. That hollow feeling had returned. Not rage, not even disappointment, just asterisk absence. Asterisk. Like something inside me had turned to vacuum. I wasn't jealous of Jason's medal. I wasn't. I didn't need a piece of metal to know what I'd done. The people I saved, the decisions I made, the lives I carried out of fire. But this wasn't about the medal. It was about what it confirmed, that in my father's eyes, Jason was still the golden son, and I was the workhorse, the asset, the weapon, valuable, but not asterisk valued, asterisk. That night, I returned to my quarters on the asterisk Daring Light asterisk. The ship felt strangely empty, even though I knew the crew was back on board. The halls echoed. The lights were dimmed for cycle rest. I went to the observation deck, my private little corner of the galaxy, poured myself a half glass of Kasari bourbon, and stared out at the stars. It's strange how comforting they are. Cold, distant, indifferent. But at least they're honest. I thought about Jason, about the photo we'd taken when I graduated the academy. Him in civilian clothes, me in my cadet uniform. He had his arm around me, smiling. I remember thinking that maybe things would change now, that we'd finally be equals, that our father would see us both, not just the son who shared his name. But nothing ever changed. Jason got promoted fast. He transferred off-world once, maybe twice. Desk positions, high-profile logistics roles. His holoreels showed him smiling beside admirals, laughing at galas. Meanwhile, I was halfway across the sector in gunmetal ships and war zones, patching up broken peace and pulling soldiers out of burning airlocks. Different wars, different battlefields. But only one of us got to be the hero. I looked at my reflection in the glass that night and saw the lines beneath my eyes, the small scar above my eyebrow. Souvenirs from a skirmish outside Drelos 6. No one knew how I'd gotten it. I never mentioned it in the reports. Just another moment lost to the quiet forgetting of command. I think that's what being invisible really is. Not being unseen, but being asterisk unremembered. Asterisk. You do everything right. You give everything. And when the moment passes, no one looks back. Except you. I finished the drink and sat in silence, listening to the pulse of the ship. Eventually, I pulled up the medal citation for Jason. His commendation was eloquent, stirring, full of words like exemplary oversight and instrumental support. No mention of the squadron I led, the standoff I negotiated with armed rebels, the engineer I carried when the platform exploded. My name wasn't even footnoted, and that, more than anything, broke something in me, not because I wanted credit, but because I needed to know it asterisk mattered. Asterisk that someone saw it, that I wasn't bleeding into a void. When morning came, I filed my debrief. I attached the casualty logs. I signed off on the psychological readiness forms for every crew member. Then I stared at the assignment orders sitting in my inbox. Top clearance only. A message from Fleet Command. And below it, a note from my father. Recommend acceptance. Strategic value. Potential for advancement. Ray Merrick. No. Well done. No. I'm proud of you. Just a recommendation. Just another war. I didn't open the assignment yet. Not then. Because as I stood in my cabin, staring at the message, I realized something. They could hand medals to ghosts. They could build legacies out of fiction. But I was still here, still standing, still carrying the weight, and one day, maybe not today, maybe not even soon, someone was going to see that. And when they did, they'd understand. Asterisk. I was never just doing my job. I was surviving a war no one else would name. It wasn't always this way. Or maybe it was, and I just hadn't seen it. Memory is a tricky thing. It filters through the lens of who you've become. Sometimes I look back and wonder if I missed the signs, or if I simply refused to see them. Growing up, I idolized my father. Rear Admiral Thomas Merrick was larger than life. Tall, composed, always in control. When he entered a room, conversation softened. People stood straighter. He had that kind of gravity. To me, he was a god walking among mortals. I'd sit at the foot of his chair while he told stories of space battles, first contacts, political brinkmanship that only narrowly avoided interstellar war. They flanked us from the nebula side, he'd say, eyes distant but sharp. But we'd already looped a decoy frigate past the asteroid field. Classic pincer maneuver. They didn't stand a chance. Jason would usually yawn halfway through and slink off to play gravball or sim combat with his friends. But I stayed. I hung on every word. I wasn't just listening. I was learning, taking mental notes, strategizing. I wanted to be just like him, strong, respected, unshakable. There's a photograph from when I was 11. I'm standing in front of the Merrick family console wall, an interactive archive of every Merrick who ever served in the Coalition Navy. My hand is resting on the panel that displays my father's name, glowing softly with his credentials and citations. I remember telling my mother that one day, my asterisk name would be there too. She smiled and said, "Yours will shine brighter than all the rest." I held on to that. Even now, I still do. When I enlisted, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd be proud. He didn't even look up from his terminal when I told him. "You should aim for command track," he said, typing steadily. "But don't expect special treatment." "I never do," I replied. He gave a small nod, as if that settled everything. "Good, then get to work." That was it. No ceremony, no handshake, not even a glance. Still, I pushed forward. I finished in the top 4% of my class at the academy, made squad leader during advanced tactical, and earned early commendation during my first deployment on the Asterisk Resolute. Asterisk. Each time, I sent home the report. Each time, the same silence followed. No messages, no acknowledgement. And yet, when Jason graduated, with average marks and barely a scrape of field readiness, my father attended in person, stood front row, clapped when his name was called. I watched the hollows from my bunk, thousands of light years away, my jaw clenched so hard I felt it in my ears. Jason grinned in every picture. Loose, easy, golden. He landed a fleet operations desk job within months, some elite logistics division on Earth. High visibility, low risk. The kind of job that lets you network with admirals at social functions while sipping imported wine. When Dad talked about him, his voice warmed. "Jason's got initiative. He's learning how the machine runs, making smart connections." When he talked about me, on the rare occasions he did, it was mechanical. "She's holding her post, moving up steadily, good discipline." You'd think Jason had brokered galactic peace with a spreadsheet. Meanwhile, I'd spent 2 months dragging wounded crew from collapsed habitat domes during the Navaran uprising. But Jason was charming. I was competent. And in my father's world, charm won. Mom was the only one who truly saw me. She wasn't military, though she understood the life better than most. She had been a planetary engineer before meeting my father on a diplomatic escort assignment. Soft-spoken, but sharp. She always had a way of making people feel like they mattered, like they were heard. When I was young, she'd listen to my excited retellings of academy drills or minor mission updates with the same reverence she gave to his war stories. "You're my star captain," she'd say, brushing the hair out of my face. "Never forget that." I never did. Her belief in me was the foundation I built everything on. When she got sick, I was deep into my second deployment. The news came via a brief comm, simple, clinical. Stage 4, degenerative neurocellular disorder, rapid progression expected. I requested emergency leave. It was denied. My father didn't fight it. He said, "She'd want you to keep serving." I never got to say goodbye. She died 2 weeks later. The funeral was quiet. Jason gave a speech. My father stood like a statue. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I remember looking into her coffin, wishing I could talk to her one more time. To tell her about my most recent mission. To feel seen again. After that, something in our family collapsed. Dad became colder. Jason, more entitled. I threw myself into service. Longer deployments, harder assignments, anything to silence the ache. My promotion record became a straight line upward, fueled by grief and defiance. I kept chasing those words she used to say. They never came. Sometimes I wonder if my father loved her in the way I hope he did. Sometimes I wonder if he loved any of us. He never remarried, never even mentioned her again after the memorial. Her pictures came down from the house on Ganymede within the year. It was like she had been folded out of our history, softly erased. The last time I visited home, I found her garden gone, replaced with a rock-stabilized landing pad. No flowers, no scent, just steel and concrete. Jason said, "It's more efficient this way." I didn't speak to either of them for months after that. Then the invitation arrived. It came on a sleek black data packet, encrypted and sealed with Fleet High Command's clearance. The kind of packet that usually meant an emergency reassignment or Black Ops consultation. But this was different. The message wasn't from Fleet. It was from Jason Ava, there's a ceremony next month on Earth. I know things are strained, but I'm asking you to come. Not as a commander, not as a soldier. As my sister. Jason. No details, just a time, a place. The words stirred something complicated in me. Resentment, curiosity, a flicker of hope, maybe. I didn't delete the message. I stared at it for hours. 3 days later, a second message came. This one from my father. Attendance is expected. Bring dress uniform. R.A. Merrick. Expected. Not requested. Not welcomed. I almost refused. The part of me that had been burned too many times, the part that remembered cold eyes and colder silences, wanted to reply with a single word. No. But there was something else. A nagging whisper. What if it's different this time? It wasn't a voice I trusted. It sounded too much like the girl I used to be. But still, I packed the uniform. The journey to Earth took 4 days by high-priority transport. I spent most of it staring out the window, watching the stars shift. Earth hadn't been home in a long time. Too many missions, too many new worlds. But as the planet grew closer, I felt something tighten in my chest. A knot of memory and pain. I hadn't been back since Mom's funeral. Jason was waiting at the terminal. Crisp Fleet dress, polished shoes, that same unshakable grin. He looked older than I remembered, a little more tired around the eyes. "Hey, Captain," he said, using our old nickname. "You came." I nodded once. "You summoned." I obeyed. He winced. "Yeah, I deserve that." I didn't hug him. He didn't try. We rode in silence for most of the trip back to the estate. The house was unchanged from the outside, white spires, curved glass, the coalition flag fluttering high. Inside, everything smelled like sterility and cleaning agents. No warmth, no trace of her. Our father greeted me in the foyer. "You're late," he said. I was early. The ceremony was scheduled for the following evening. A large gala hosted by the Naval Honor Board. Full dress affair, dozens of officers, awards, speeches. I still didn't know what it was for. Neither Jason nor my father volunteered details. It wasn't until I slipped into the side hall to check the program listing that I saw it. Special recognition. Honoree. Commander Ava Merrick. For exemplary conduct and leadership during Operation Dusk Flare. I stood frozen, rereading the line over and over. It wasn't a medal, not a promotion, just recognition. Official, public, visible, Someone had seen it. Someone had finally seen me, And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story. I found the envelope tucked into my personal comms bin. An actual envelope. Real paper. Smooth, thick stock, embossed with the seal of the Strategic Defense Recognition Summit. That golden insignia glinted under the overhead light, and for a moment, I thought it was a mistake. Most official communication came through secure digital packets. Only the highest levels of decorum used paper these days. My name was written by hand. Commander of Americ. I broke the seal carefully, a strange reverence tightening my chest. The envelope held a single ivory card, engraved in rich navy blue ink. The words were direct, formal. You are cordially invited to serve as the keynote speaker. At the 47th Annual Strategic Defense Recognition Summit. Topic Leadership under fire. Operation Star. Hold Duration 30 minutes, followed by a Q/NA panel with Coalition High Command. Uniform, full dress blues. Date, redacted. Location, Olympus Hall, EarthGov Capital, Geneva Sector. I read it 3 times before the meaning fully settled in. They wanted *me*, not Jason, not a representative, not a panel of analysts. *me. Someone, somewhere, had gone through the records, sifted through the logs, and seen past the headline names and filed commendations. Someone had seen the truth. Who led the mission? Who made the calls? Who stood on the scorched ground while the dust was still in the air and got her people home? I sat on the edge of my bunk for a long time, the card in my hands. My room was silent except for the hum of ship systems cycling in the walls. My thoughts weren't silent, though. I hadn't intended to tell my father. Not at first. Some childish part of me wanted to let the moment exist for myself alone, untainted by his cynicism or his perpetual doubt. But part of me, the part that still looked for the flicker of recognition in his face, couldn't help it. I found him in the observation atrium of the Naval Lodge, standing beside a curved glass wall that framed Earth's moon like an art piece. He was alone, dressed in fleet gray, hands clasped behind his back, posture impeccable as always. "Father?" He turned his head slightly. "Ava?" There was a pause. No smile, no warmth. "I received an invitation," I said. I kept my tone even, careful. "Strategic Defense Recognition Summit. They've asked me to be the keynote speaker." His brow furrowed slightly. "On what topic?" "Operation Starhold." That got a reaction. A slight twitch of his jaw. Barely there. He turned fully toward me now, expression hardening. "Are you sure it's not a clerical error? Jason is presenting on behalf of Starhold support teams." My breath caught. Of course he'd say that. Not *congratulations*, not *well-deserved*, not even "I'm proud of you." Just a question, one that reduced me, again, to a footnote in my own mission. "No," I said. My voice didn't waver. "It's not an error. I'm speaking about my mission." He said nothing for a long moment. His silence was louder than anger. Finally, he turned back to the view. "Just be aware of the optics." "The optics," I repeated. "Jason's role in logistics was essential. A keynote from you may be interpreted as a slight." I let out a breath that bordered on a laugh, cold and disbelieving. "A slight?" His voice remained cool. "You've worked hard, Ava. Don't let ego cost you support within high command." I stared at him. I wanted to scream, to throw my medals at his feet and demand he *me, but instead I straightened. "I'm not going for politics," I said. "I'm going because someone finally saw what I did, and I'm not letting you make me question that." He didn't respond. I left without another word. Back in my quarters, I packed my dress blues with trembling hands. Not from fear, not this time. Anticipation pulsed through my fingertips as I folded each piece with precision. The high-collared jacket, the polished silver insignia, the command stripes that marked 17 years of service. I'd worn this uniform at funerals, at tribunal reviews, in war briefings before brutal campaigns. But this would be the first time I wore it for myself. I was done chasing approval, done shrinking to fit the spaces others left for me. This wasn't about my father. It wasn't about Jason. This was about truth, about being seen. And I was ready. The event was held in Olympus Hall, one of the most prestigious buildings on EarthGov soil. Everything about it was designed to inspire awe, from the towering crystalline pillars that shimmered with refracted light to the echoing marble halls lined with plaques etched in every coalition language. As I stepped inside, I could feel it. The weight of history pressing around me, 1,000 achievements etched into these walls. I checked in at the delegate station. They handed me a slim folio with my speaking slot and credentials. On the first page, in bold letters, it read, **, keynote, Commander Ava Merrick. Asterisk, asterisk. Moderator, Admiral Cedric Noah. Panel, Rear Admiral Hallie Vance, Strategic Command Director Elaine C., Fleet Analyst Marcus Rodham. No Jason. No last-minute swap, no shared credit. It was real. The reception was a blur of introductions and flashes, reporters, officers, and dignitaries shaking hands and snapping hollows. I kept my answers polite but brief. My nerves thrummed under the surface, not from insecurity, but from intensity, from purpose. Just before the keynote, I ducked into a quiet alcove behind the main chamber. I needed a breath. A moment. That's when Jason found me. He leaned against the wall, dressed impeccably, of course. His smile was gentler than usual, almost hesitant. "You're really doing it," he said. I turned to face him. "Yes." He nodded, then looked down. "I didn't know they invited you until after, I swear." I didn't respond. "I didn't lobby for the commendation," he added quietly. "Dad submitted the recommendation. I didn't even want it. That startled me." "You didn't?" Jason sighed. "Do you think I don't see it, Ava? I know what you did out there. I read every report. I saw the casualty projections, what they would have been without your calls." I blinked. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because Dad wouldn't listen. He sees you as competition, not family. And I—" He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't know how to fix it." That old ache flickered again. The one that whispered maybe, just maybe, we could be more than what he'd made us. "I don't need you to fix it," I said softly. "I just needed you to *C* it." "I do now," he said. "And I'm proud of you." I searched his face, looking for the smirk, the deflection. It wasn't there. I nodded once. "Thank you." He extended a hand. For a long second, I hesitated. Then I shook it. When I stepped onto the stage, the hall fell silent. Hundreds of eyes watched me ascend the platform, some curious, some indifferent, some expectant. I stood behind the podium, my name glowing on the holoscreen above me. Commander Ava Merrick. Keynote. I took a breath. Deep, steady. My voice rang clear. "I've been in the Navy for 17 years. I've commanded ships through contested war zones and stood between civilians and annihilation. But I want to talk to you today about something we don't always see, what leadership looks like when no one is watching." I paused, scanning the crowd. Operation Starhold was a success by every tactical measure. But success came at a cost. Decisions made in smoke-filled tunnels, orders given when comms failed, moments when hesitation meant death. I told them the story, the real story. I told them about Commander Yen, who refused evac so her injured crew could survive. About Lieutenant Mako, who crawled through collapsed conduits with broken ribs to reactivate emergency power. About the choices that didn't make it into press releases, the ones that lived on as scars. And I told them about carrying those choices, about waking up months later, wondering if I had done enough, wondering if anyone would ever know what it took. And then I said, leadership isn't about being thanked. It's not about medals or spotlights. It's about standing in the dark when the lights go out and saying, "I'm still here." It's about taking responsibility for lives, for failure, for hope. And it's about having the courage to be seen, not just by others, but by yourself. Silence stretched long and full. Then came the applause. And I let it in. For the first time, I let it reach me. Afterward, admirals approached me, young officers too, some with tears in their eyes. They said I'd put words to something they'd felt but never spoken. Jason stood at the edge of the room, watching. He didn't try to steal the moment. And my father? He left before I came off stage. Of course he did. But this time, it didn't break me. Because he wasn't the reason I came. I came for the woman I saw in the mirror every morning. The one who clawed her way through 17 years of silence, who led without fanfare, who carried her people home. I came for her. And at long last, she was seen. The shuttle docked with a gentle hiss, and the polished chrome bay doors of Helios Station. Slid open to reveal a space unlike any I'd ever served in. Helios wasn't a warship. It wasn't even a command center. It was a cathedral of diplomacy, of perception. Orbiting just above Earth's capital zone, it gleamed with layered glass domes and sun-capturing pylons that bathed the interior in a warm, perpetual golden glow. It was beauty forged in discipline, precision draped in splendor, a perfect place for the Strategic Defense Recognition Summit, where victories were turned into symbols and symbols into legacy. I stepped off the ramp with slow, steady breaths, dress blues crisp, medals in perfect alignment, chin high, spine straight. My heart beat like a slow drum in my chest, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't here to prove myself, not anymore. An aide from Central Fleet met me near the arrival atrium. She had dark, short-cropped hair, a laser-pinned smile, and an escort badge clipped to her lapel. "Commander Merrick," she said, offering a respectful nod. "This way, please." I followed her through crystalline corridors that reflected the stars like scattered diamonds. Other officers passed us, some in silver-braided command jackets, others in ceremonial robes. There were planetary governors, Admiralty Council members, war historians, and tech magnates, all gathered under the same glass canopy to witness history and to shape it. The main chamber was more theater than war room, tiered seating in a wide semicircle with cascading glass panels behind the stage, revealing a panoramic view of Earth turning below. Spotlights hung like satellites above and soft but precise. I was led to a private prep room behind the stage. There I reviewed my notes, not because I didn't know them, but because I needed a moment to breathe, a moment to steady myself. A chime sounded at the door. 2 minutes, the aide said. "They're introducing you now." I stepped into the narrow corridor, leading to the podium, the hum of anticipation just audible beyond the wall. My boots echoed on the polished floor. My pulse did not rise. "Commander Ava Merrick," the announcer said, his voice amplified with smooth gravity. "Commanding Officer of the Navarre Lead Tactical Coordinator and Field Commander of Operation Star Hold." No mention of Jason. I stepped into the light. The hall silenced as I emerged. Hundreds of faces turned to me, some curious, others guarded, a few already judging. High Command occupied the front rows, officers with decades of combat scars hidden beneath layers of diplomacy. Fleet commanders, sector governors, legislators, civilian defense liaisons, faces I knew from war briefings and cold evaluations. And 2 rows back, them. Jason, my father. Jason's face was unreadable, his posture relaxed, but too still. His eyes locked onto me, not with arrogance, but with something else. Tension, maybe regret. My father sat beside him, arms crossed tightly, his uniform impeccable, his expression carved from the same stone that had built his career. Not a flicker of emotion. I met his gaze briefly, then looked away. I didn't come for him. I came for me. I gripped the edges of the podium. "I stand before you today not to recount the strategic value of Operation Star Hold," I began. "The after-action reports, the logistical archives, the public briefings, they all tell part of that story." I scanned the crowd. "But they don't tell the story of the people who lived it." Silence. Good. I had their attention. I was commanding officer of the Navarre the coalition vessel that led the field operation to secure the evac corridor through the Renari Drift. Our mission: extract 6 civilian envoys trapped behind an unexpected blockade, under threat from a rebel faction with weapons that should never have made it into their hands. I paused. They did, because intelligence was wrong, because support was delayed, because we were out there and command wasn't. There was a rustle in the audience, just enough discomfort to know they heard me. But I'm not here to cast blame. I'm here to tell you what leadership looks like when it's not filtered through optics. I told them about the day the rebels jammed our long-range comms, how our backup transports were destroyed before they could launch, how we had one chance, one window, to run a distraction maneuver and lead the enemy away from the evac route, and how we didn't have orders. I made the call anyway. I told them about Ensign Dorn, who stayed behind on the orbital tether to give us clearance. About Chief Engineer Malenko, who rerouted fusion relays under fire. About Lieutenant Rivera, who held the aft cannon platform even after her leg was shattered by shrapnel. And about the moment I stood on the bridge, alone, with 14 lives depending on me to make a choice no one would ever see. A choice that command would never have time to question, until it was already done. That's what leadership under fire looks like, I said. Not just strategy, not just bravery, but the willingness to bear the weight of the unknown, the humility to ask for help, and the strength to act alone when help doesn't come. I let the silence stretch again. I didn't bring everyone home, I added, softer now. But I brought most of them, and I carry the names of the ones we lost, every day. I looked up, and I ask this summit to remember, not just the victories, but the people who make them possible, the ones who don't get medals, who don't get speaking slots, the ones whose blood writes the reports others sign their names to. I stepped back. I thank you for your time. For a moment, nothing. Then a slow clap began from somewhere in the middle rows. It built, second by second, until the room was filled with applause, polite at first, then stronger. A few officers rose, then a few more. A partial standing ovation. Not everyone. But enough. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I stood tall, hands steady at my sides. For the first time, I wasn't waiting to be validated. I was simply seen. The reception after the speech was a blur. People I didn't know, admirals, strategists, attaches, shook my hand. A few asked for quotes. One young officer quietly said, "That's the first time I felt like someone understood what it's really like out there." I thanked them, but kept moving. Eventually, I found myself near one of the station's panoramic decks, watching Earth slowly spin below, white clouds swirling above blue oceans. A perfect world, far away from the blood and decisions of war. I heard footsteps behind me. Jason. He stood in silence for a moment, hands in his pockets, looking not at me, but at the view. "You were right," he said quietly. "That was your mission." I turned my head, but said nothing. I shouldn't have taken the credit, or let Dad put my name on that citation. I knew it. But I told myself, if I didn't, I'd never get another chance like it. He looked at me now, his expression stripped of charm. "I'm sorry, Ava." His words hung in the air between us. Honest, uneasy. I studied him. The face that used to charm teachers, command crews, even me, when we were younger. I wanted to believe him, but sorry doesn't erase choices, and it doesn't rewrite truth. "No," I said, not unkindly. "You shouldn't have." He nodded, the weight of it settling on his shoulders. I looked back at the stars. He waited, maybe hoping for more, but there wasn't anything left to say. I turned, and I walked away. I left Helios Station the next morning. No fanfare, no farewell gala, just a return shuttle and a calm awaiting reassignment. I felt lighter, not because I'd won anything, but because I had stopped carrying the need to be *approved*. Let others write history. I knew what I had done. And for once, that was enough. The morning after the summit, I stood alone in the viewing deck of the civilian departure terminal, watching Helios Station drift further and further behind the shuttle. Its polished surface caught the sunlight like a signal flare in the void, gleaming too perfectly against the black. It looked smaller now, distant. Maybe that was the point. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no sweeping orchestral swell, no crowd waiting with open arms, no last-minute apology from my father, or some grand revelation that changed everything. What I felt was subtler, deeper. I felt free. The shuttle hummed quietly as it aligned for orbit drop. I took my seat by the window and buckled in, my dress blues now folded neatly beside me. The applause from the summit still echoed faintly in my memory, but it didn't linger like I thought it would. It wasn't what stayed with me. What stayed was the silence afterward. The stillness in my chest when I realized I didn't need it. I'd stood on that stage without flinching, not for them, but for me, for my crew, for the truth. The audience didn't define the speech. I did. I'd spent so many years climbing, clawing, commanding with the desperate, half-conscious hope that one day someone would finally look at me and say, "There, she matters." And now I realized I didn't need anyone to say it. I already knew. I thought about my father. He hadn't said a word after the speech, not during the reception, not at departure, not in passing. He didn't approach me, didn't offer a handshake or a curt nod. That silence used to gut me, used to make me question everything. But now it was just silence. It was the echo of a hollow place I no longer needed to fill. He had chosen a version of me that never existed, an ideal, a shadow, a disappointment, and clung to it so tightly that the real me never stood a chance. I think, in his mind, he still doesn't know who I am. And maybe he never will. And that's okay. I'm not his unfinished story. I'm my own. Jason had at least said something. For once, I replayed our brief conversation in my head, not because I needed the apology, but because it felt like closure. He didn't try to justify. He didn't minimize. He owned it in his own quiet way. That was more than I'd expected. I didn't forgive him, not fully, not yet, but I didn't carry the anger anymore either. That weight had burned itself out long ago, only I'd kept dragging the ashes behind me, convinced they still mattered. They didn't. Some things don't need to be resolved, just released. As the shuttle banked into the planet's upper atmosphere, I glanced down at the world below. Asterisk, asterisk, Earth. Dot, asterisk, asterisk. Blue and endless, like the stories Mom used to tell. She'd believed in stories, in the importance of telling them truthfully, even the hard parts. She'd told mine before I knew how to speak it for myself. I missed her more now than I had in years. Not in grief, but in gratitude. She had seen me when no one else had, even when I couldn't see myself. She had whispered it in every bedtime story, every quiet embrace. Asterisk, you are already enough. Her voice came back to me now, not in words, but in warmth, a steady glow behind my ribs. I let my eyes close, just for a moment, when I stepped off the shuttle and back into the familiar hangars of asterisk, asterisk. Fleet Station, Orion, asterisk, asterisk. It felt like returning to a version of myself I had outgrown and finally understood. Crews bustled with purpose. Officers barked orders. Mechanics hovered over engine cores like surgeons. I passed through it all with steady steps, nodding to those I recognized. Not all saluted, not all smiled, but the respect in their eyes was different now. Not awe, not distance, recognition. That mattered more than any medal. I made my way to my assigned quarters, still unoccupied, still marked with my rank and name. Asterisk, asterisk, Uomp Dar, Ava Merrick, FSS Navarre, asterisk, asterisk, my ship, my crew. I let my fingers brush the metal plaque beside the door, grounding myself in the steel and silence. Inside, the room was the same as I'd left it. Tidy, spare, efficient. My medals were still in their box on the shelf. I didn't open it. I wasn't here for trophies. Instead, I set my folded uniform down and crossed to the viewport. The stars outside blinked against the darkness, and somewhere out there, assignments waited. New missions, new lives to protect, new decisions to make. I wasn't done, not even close. But something had changed. I poured myself a small cup of tea, one of Mom's old rituals, and stood in the quiet, letting the warmth of it settle in my hands. I thought about all the battles behind me, not just on the field, but inside me. The ones no one would ever log in mission reports. The fights for identity, for purpose, for voice. And I thought about the battles ahead, because they would come. They always do. But next time, I'd meet them without apology, without shame, without needing to be seen. I sat at my desk and opened a fresh file. Not a report, not a log, a letter, not to command, not to my father, to myself. To the girl who once stayed up all night studying flight mechanics just to earn a spot in the simulator. To the woman who stood her ground on a bridge while enemy fire cracked the hull. To the commander who lost good people and kept going anyway. To the daughter who never stopped trying to be enough, and finally realized she always was. I wrote, "You have done hard things. You have walked through fire. You have led with clarity when no one else saw the path. And you are still here. That is enough. You are enough." I didn't sign it. I just closed the file, encrypted it, and saved it in a folder titled ***Legacy****. Maybe someday someone else will find it. Maybe not. But I will know it's there. The next day, I reported to the mission board. There were 3 postings available, 2 recon, 1 relief. I chose the relief mission, not because it was safer. It wasn't. The relief corridor ran close to old border zones, and tensions there had flared again. But it was a mission where leadership mattered, where steady hands and clear eyes saved lives, where someone like me could make a difference. I signed the orders, sealed my approval, and prepared my crew for departure. As we lifted off, engines humming under my boots, I looked out at the stars one more time. Not searching, just ready. Commander Ava Merrick. Leader, survivor, daughter, and finally, *enough*.